Hello, and welcome back to Musicians Edition. Are you ready to tackle scales? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Let's go! Scales. What are they? A scale is an organization of notes that ascend and descend. Knowing our scales is highly important as they guide us to knowing what notes will be used in a song. Since we are learning, we're going to talk about the three types of scales today. That would be the major scale, the minor scale, and the chromatic scale. Let's first talk about the major scale. It sounds like this. Whether it's a major scale or a major chord, it has a happy sound. When we sing the major scale, it was just like I sang before the show opening. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Let's learn this first. Though it sounds funny now, it's crazy how much it helps later. Here's a song that will help us. This song comes from the movie The Sound of Music, called Do, Re, Mi. And it goes, do, a deer, a female deer, re, a drop of golden sun, mi, a name I call myself, fa, a long, long way to run, so a needle pulling thread, la, to follow up with so, ti, it goes a jam and bread, that brings us back to do. Let's sing it together. Do, a deer, a female deer, re, a drop of golden sun, mi, a name I call myself, fa, a long, long way to run, so a needle pulling thread, la, to follow up with so, ti, it goes a jam and bread, that brings us back to do. Great. Okay, let's just sing the scale now. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now let's descend. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Wonderful. Make sure you take the time to practice and learn these. It'll come handy later. Okay, let's talk about what the major scale entails. So we have discussed the half steps and the whole steps in our previous lessons. But here's a quick recap. So a whole step would be the distance between the first two notes. Example, A to B is a whole step. Now, a half step is a note in between. It can be written as a sharp or a flat. So example, here's A, here's B flat. Do you hear how it's in between A and B? A, B flat, B. B flat could also mean A sharp. It's the same note. How is that possible? Come take a look at the piano. Okay, so here is our note A, correct? So a sharp is a half step higher, right? So that would put us at this key, right? Now here is the note B. And a flat is a half step lower, right? So that would put us back at the same key. Crazy, huh? I know it's a little confusing right now, but as we go along, we will learn why we have both sharps and flats. But let's get back to our scale. Okay, So now that we remember what the half steps and the whole steps are, let's go over what the major scale consists of. I know that it feels like silly information right now, but this is important. Okay, so all the major scales follow the same pattern, no matter what key we're in. I know we haven't gone over our key signatures yet, but yes, all major scales follow the same half and whole steps pattern. So let's take a look. The major scales pattern is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Let's take a look at it on the piano, shall we? Let's play this in the key of C. There are no sharps or flats in the key of C. So, C to D is a whole step, right? How do we know? The black key is the half step, and we skipped it. That means we did a whole step. C, D. Moving on to our next one. D to E. Is this a half step or a whole step? This is a whole step. Now, here's where it gets tricky. E to F. There is no black key. E to F is a half step. There isn't really an E sharp or an F flat. I know, confusing, but that's just the way it is. So, it actually means going E to F is actually a half step because there's nothing in between. Then we have 3 more whole steps. So we're going to skip all these black keys because they represent our half steps. And just like E to F, B and C also do not have a black key in between, so that means they are a half step. The best way to think of a half step is the key directly next to it. Let's look at the major scales. That does include some flats. Let's do the key of B flat. Don't worry, we're going to talk about these key signatures later. So, for this major scale, we have 2 flats, B flat and E flat. So, our first 2 notes are B flat and C. Is this a whole step or a half step? We're skipping this white key, which is B. So, it's a whole step. Next, we have C to D. Is this a half step or a whole step? We are skipping this black key. This is a whole step. Next is D to E flat. Is this a half step or a whole step? The E flat is a black key, and it's right next to D. So this is a half step. So now, E flat to F. Which step is this? It's a whole step because we're skipping the white key. Now, F to G, whole or half? We're skipping this black key, so it's a whole. How about G to A? That's a whole, and once again, we skipped the black key. And lastly is A to B flat, half or whole? It's half since it's just the next key. So that is the major scale. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments. Okay, ready to move on to the minor scale? Okay, so here's what the minor scale looks like. It looks very similar to the major scale. So the major scale sounds happy. Let's take a listen to the minor scale. The minor scale sounds sad. And to sing the minor scale, it sounds like this. La, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. I don't have a fun, catchy song for this one, but sing it with me anyway. La, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. And back down. La, sol, fa, mi, re, do, ti, la. We'll have to keep practicing these too, but for now, let's move on. The steps to the minor scale are whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, and whole. Okay, so looking at the piano. Now, if we want to play a minor scale but still don't want to hit any of the black keys, This will be the A minor scale. I know that's confusing, but we'll get to the names and what they are later. Right now, I just want us to understand what the minor scale is. Okay, so let's go over this. So A to B, is that a whole step or a half step? How do you know? It's a whole step. We know because we skipped this black key. Now, we have B to C. Is that a whole step or a half step? This one is a half step because we do not have the black key. They're just next to each other. C is the very next key to B. Okay, next we have C to D. Is this a half or a whole step? This one is a whole step. Great job. Okay, now D to E. This one is a whole step. We skipped the black key. Okay, how about E to F? This one is a half step. There are no keys in between E and F. How about F to G? This one is a whole step. And lastly, we have G to A. Is this half or whole? This one is a whole. Great job. Let's look at the minor scales that do involve black keys. Let's do the one that has B flat and E flat. Okay, that scale starts with the note G. So, G to A, is that a half step or a whole step? This one is a whole step. Next, we have A going to B flat. Is this one half or a whole step? This one is a half step. We hit the black key, which is very next to A. Okay, now going from B flat to C. Is this a half or a whole? It's a whole because we skipped B, which is the white key. Okay, how about going from C to D? That one is whole as we skipped the black key. Next, D to E flat. Is that a half or a whole? That one is a half step. We hit the black key. Now, going from E flat to F. Is that a whole step or a half step? This one is whole because we skipped E, which is the white key. And now lastly, we have F to G. Is this a half or a whole step? This one is a whole step. I think you're starting to get the hang of this. If you are struggling, please let me know in the comments. I'm here to help. Great job so far though. I know this may be overwhelming, but we have one more scale to talk about. This one is easier to understand. We have the chromatic scale. Now, here's what the chromatic scale looks like, and here's what it sounds like. Do you notice anything? This scale all consists of half steps. We'll learn how to sing this one later on down the road. And just so we can see this on the piano, here's what the chromatic scale looks like. Ta-da! Holy moly, we covered a lot today. I know it can feel overwhelming, but I just wanted to get us started on learning our scales. Great job today. We will continue to work on our scales, and we'll be a pro at them in no time. Before I say goodbye, I wanted to send a quick reminder to hit that subscribe, like, and notification button so you don't miss any of our lessons. Thanks for joining me, and until next time.